Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pastel Poleaxe. My name is Chloe Juniper, and today my very special guest host is Juliet Landau, known for a lot of different fantastic works. You probably know her best, obviously, as Drusilla from Buffy the Vampire and the series, as well as she played Loretta King on Ed Wood. You are a voice actor in an episode of a Doctor Who Gallifrey podcast. Is that correct? You played a Time Lord?
Yeah, I did play a timer. Actually, I did three audio books with the Doctor Who, the Big Finish um, recordings, and they were really, really amazing. So much fun
They're
to do.
so much fun. I've only listened to one of them, so I will have to go find the other two.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
you also did the voice acting for the Little Sisters in BioShock, which is one of my favorite games. So when I found that out, that was a lot of fun.
I did. That was a really cool, fun whole record as well. And working with Ken Levine, who created that incredible universe.
I can imagine. I can imagine it was amazing being a part of that. So, but today we are especially here to talk about your brand new movie, A Place Among the Dead. It is a self-written, produced, directed, and starring yourself, and it's basically a horror mockumentary that delves into narcissistic abuse, and it's extremely well done. I was really taken aback when I saw it virtually about a month ago, and yes, so I'm so honored that you are here today and that we get to kind of discuss it and you get to tell me sort of how it came into existence.
I'm so excited to be here and to talk with you again. It was incredible having you at our screening event and getting to talk with you afterwards. And so I'm really looking forward to this today as well.
And that's so sweet of you. And I just wanted to say it's your just overall patience and kindness with this whole process has just been so nice. And I just wanted to thank you for that. It's very rare that I meet people that are just like so understanding and patient and just like, no, everything's okay. You don't have to worry about it. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everything's good.
perfect. So, yes. So, first question. This is, at least in my experience, and I've seen a bunch of films, this is the first film I've ever truly seen of its kind, both in its topic sort of content, the way it explores the content, which is narcissistic abuse, and how narcissistic abuse really affects victims of it, especially concerning your character in the film, whose name is Jules, her experience over a long period of time, sort of having already experienced that and kind of being drawn back into it, albeit unintentionally. What inspired your personal journey initially to come up with the ideas that would eventually become this film?
Well, my husband, Deverell Weeks, and I co-produced and co-wrote, and we both come from this kind of background. And we wanted to make a movie that we hadn't seen before, both in the way that it's constructed and in the subject matter, and tackle something that isn't really covered in films and hasn't been talked about in society as a whole, but there is a yearning for it, and that's starting to change. If you type in the word narcissism um, into Google, there are 9,120,000 YouTube videos on the subject. There are 70,400,000 Google results. And if you type in psychological abuse, there's 188 million Google results. And we've been working with people like Dr. Romani, who is a psychologist and author, the premier expert on narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic abuse. Each of her videos get 400,000 to a million views. She's been a real champion of the film and been saying that we're basically doing through art and entertainment what she's doing through academia. So we yeah, it's been incredible. And we also just did a podcast with Dr. Catherine Barrett, who is a psychologist, a forensic psychologist, and she teaches psychology at USC. And we're going to be doing a screening event with her, Romani, and Tanya Guam, who is the founder of the NAAA. So some pretty exciting stuff's happening. I'm just shutting this off so it does not bing while we're talking. There we
Yeah,
go.
you're fine, but that's so interesting. So like it, and it wasn't just a matter of this is my kind of personal experience and I want to try to put this on the screen. You were really like, I want this to be presented in the most accurate way possible, which is
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, and really, we wanted to use our experience and my experience, as you're saying, I play an alter ego version of myself, as does Gary Oldman, Ron Perlman, Robert Patrick, Lance Henriksen, best-selling authors Anne Rice and Charlaine Harris, who are both appearing for the first time ever in a scripted movie. Um, um, we wanted really to use that as a device to open up a conversation, to give voice to what has affected many, and use that as a device, and use the extremely personal aspect of it really to open up a broader discussion, which is exactly what's been happening. And we're getting to do this today. So that's why we chose the structure that we did as well.
I love that. That's so fascinating and interesting. And it also again makes sense how, again, this film is deeply personal, obviously. For anyone who is yet to see it, it's almost kind of feels like you're walking into the mind of this character and, these different scenes that just going deeper and deeper into this trauma. There's these bits where she'll come across something that's obviously like this is going to be a murder site. You probably shouldn't go there, but she just kind of almost feels like is unable to stop herself. And it's just fascinating that it feels so genuine, especially someone, myself who has experienced that. I just when the movie started, and there's a little montage at the beginning where we are hearing these whispers like you're not good enough, you'll never succeed, you're nothing without us. There was something about like you live in a beautiful crypt, something like that, where kind of like you're dead, but it's beautiful on the outside, and that's what matters. And my friend Joshua Halen was watching it on a separate Zoom platform, and I texted him right after that, and I had chills, and I was like, I think this is about narcissism, because I hadn't read anything about the film prior to seeing it. But I said that entire opening is perfect example of what it feels like in my head to be a daughter of narcissistic parents. And he texted back and he's like, oh, interesting. And then the film ended up being about narcissism. So just
Wow.
right there, you were so accurate and head on and how you
Yeah,
portrayed it.
that's so interesting. I remember when we talked afterwards, and you saying it felt like you opened up my head and the thoughts in my head. We really, Dev and I were looking at the fact that we had never listened to or seen a voiceover in a movie that remotely sounded like the inner monologue or thoughts in our minds. And we started thinking about, where do all those thoughts come from? We all make agreements with our parents, and these become the voices and the thoughts in our minds. And the whole point of the movie is that you, as an adult, you have a choice, and you can break those agreements, and you can decide not to be ruled by them. My alter ego is not doing that. She's letting the past run the show. She's letting the unconscious run the show, and it's leading her to destructive choice after destructive choice. Hopefully I'm not doing that in my life anymore, but I did for a long time. And it's really what we wanted to look at. And in essence, it's a cautionary tale. And you are inside Jules's POV for a lot of the movie. You're sort of, we play between the first perspective and the third perspective, but that really was to give that sort of harrowing feeling that you're talking about. Right from the get-go, the movie sort of hits you with a punch.
Absolutely, yes. And it is devastating to watch her, almost kind of make these subconscious choices and be like, and of course I will not spoil the ending, but just kind of you're really pulling for her. I'll just say that the whole way through. You're like, please, please, please don't do this.
Well, it's
um,
also that idea that how we all, often replay and replay the unwinnable parent over and over and over, and each time it's worse and worse and worse. If you're not, consciously going about things, that you tend to do that in life, and that's what Jules is certainly doing.
For sure, yes. So, again, it's very intimate and brave portrayal of someone who has suffered, narcissistic abuse. Is during the making of this film, was it sort of a, I guess, cathartic process for you, or was it much more just, like this is a film, was it more, I guess, focused on like really getting to the message, or was there a lot of, I guess like really trying to process your own stuff while going through it as well?
I think for us, the mission was bigger than us. And so what happened and what's been so rewarding and profound right now is the conversations that we're having, which is why we made the film. We wanted it to be an entertaining movie, but we really wanted to have the dialogue that we've been having. Every single screening event that we've had, the interactive audience Zooms have lasted 4 hours long. And
Wow.
what ends up emerging is people from all over the world, every space that you can think about, from every socioeconomic um, um, strata. And what ends up emerging is, whether it's familial, whether you're talking about parental, or whether you're talking about other relatives, or whether it's a spouse or a girlfriend or an ex-boyfriend or a boss or a coworker or our world leaders. What ends up emerging at a certain point in every single Zoom talking with the audience is people saying, oh my God, it's as if we're describing the exact same person. These traits are so much the same. I mean, you were talking about your upbringing and how those thoughts sounded so much like what because of what you come from. And so you had that response when you were talking about it, right?
Correct. Yes. Yes, for sure. And I love that you also made a film that, a big point of it was I want people to be able to have this discussion because it's so important and it's so prominent just in everyday life. Actually, while we're on that topic, I'm going to jump down to one of the questions, then come back to one of the others. So,
Sure.
the choice to use a vampire in the film to represent this kind of fantasy creature, to represent these monstrous acts that humans commit against each other every single day, as I love it. It's very psychologically sound and makes perfect sense. And there's one scene in particular where your character Jules is going she's interviewing people trying to find out information about the vampire whose name is Darcel, which when I heard that in the film, I used to know French really well and I immediately recognized it meant dark. And I was like, oh, I love that. I love when characters are named to really represent who they are. But she's attempts to try to be like, hey, do you know anything about this vampire? We're trying to track him down. And the young woman recognizes Jules as an actress who has portrayed vampires herself. And there's this discussion of, oh, I'm a fan, but at the same time, why are you romanticizing this?
Mhm.
And it was a very interesting scene. Can you kind of maybe tell me a little bit more about like kind of that thought process? And is because something I got from it was almost, like, me myself as someone who grew up around narcissism, I'm sure I have been cruel to someone else, albeit unintentionally. And, before I was really aware of what was going on, before I was able to get my own help and grow and mature in my own way, is that kind of something that's being portrayed as Jules is maybe worried that, while it's a job, she's getting a job playing a vampire. It doesn't mean she is a vampire, but is that kind of adding to that layer of she's really terrified of becoming this monster herself?
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. And also the idea of, that of it was actually inspired by a real event in terms of a friend of mine when I was on Buffy had said to me, does it bother you that you're glamorizing, your characters are the characters like I'd want to hang out with you and Spike all the time, that you're the characters that are, you're super sexy and glamorous. And do you feel like there's a problem there? And the thing that it was an interesting conversation we had, because I think because we were playing fantastical characters, we were not condoning violence. We weren't condoning, there was a certain sphere within what it was, that it was, there was a romantic element with the characters, but it was clearly fictional. I think the thing in the course of this movie is, one of the victims' mothers is confronting Jules in that way, and so it is her having to look at it. And meanwhile, Darcel thinks he is preserving these girls and keeping them, that they're the most at their most beautiful state when he's actually killing them. And his preoccupation with the superficiality of that again ties back into narcissism, and it be, and that we all are only viable for such a short window of time. So there's just so much there really to unpack. And I think, we chose the vampire genre for a number of reasons, and you've touched on on many of them. We wanted to, first of all, make an entertaining movie. And if you type in the word vampire, there are 278 million Google results for vampires. We also wanted to lull the audience into a sense of safety in a familiar format using some of the familiar tropes to talk about unsafe and what to many people are radical ideas. Um, it was a great way to tie in my history and all of the other actors and people appearing in the movie, their histories, because every single one has a tie to the vampire genre. And we thought that it was the perfect metaphor for the ultimate narcissist. It's a being which drains all for its own survival with no regard for its victim. It's a being that often mesmerizes and puts people in its thrall. Narcissists are often extremely charismatic. When it's not family or parental, you often invite them in to your life. They have no self-reflection, and vampires obviously can't see their own reflection. Vampires do not change, and narcissists do not change either. And that they cannot grow and look at themselves and change their behaviors. And so it goes on and on and on. And we just thought this is such a great way to talk about this. And you're never really sure in the movie whether the character is in actuality a vampire or a serial killer who emulates a vampire. But either way, the traits are the same.
Right. And I love how many different layers there is to that. Like, I thought about a lot of them, but the reflection bit makes me really happy. I'm like, that's so neat. I love that.
Yeah, they cannot see, like the same way the vampires cannot look in the mirror and see themselves. It's the same thing when you're
Right.
dealing with someone of this personality type. They really do not see it. And they often don't even see you as a separate, unique individual. You're just an extension of themselves and what they can get from you and what needs you service.
Right. And almost also the idea of, a vampire makes other vampires. It's like, no, you're not kind of perfect until you're one of me. So
Hmm.
I love all of that. That's incredible. It's going to be so much more for me to like be comprehending and thinking about next time that I get to see the movie. So I love it. One of my personal favorite aspects about the film is, as you had mentioned, Darcel, he wants to sort of preserve these girls, and he does so in very artistic forms.
Hmm.
You and the art designer Mark McHaley had mentioned on the Q&A that I attended how a lot of them, the victims were sort of stylized to look like these old like Renaissance paintings, very beautiful, very romantic, very tragic. Can you tell me a little bit more about sort of that process? Was that, just like how you and Mark worked together to sort of come up with this idea of the way that you wanted these girls to be preserved through the eyes of this, monster?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for that. It was interesting because Dev and I talked in relation to the movie of really wanting, in general, a sort of look, that the look be opposed to the subject matter, so that that there was a dreamlike, uh, beautiful, enticing quality to offset the stark psychological terror. And we really wanted those things to sit together, because also very often things, somebody that's like this looks very appealing. They're well put together, they are charismatic, all of that stuff. So that was something in all of the visual choices that we were very conscious of, with the color palettes that we chose, with we put together a whole lookbook ahead of time. We worked with every department, did extensive camera, makeup and hair tests, and camera tests with Dev, shot some of it in our DP Akis Constantinopolis. And working with Mark McHaley, he's so incredibly talented. We started initially, it's funny, Dev and I started with where he did some photographs where I was lying in different positions, and we sort of picked our winner positions that we thought would be work really well. And then we shot the actual crime scene photos first, and we worked with our actors and our actresses and placed them in those positions and made them look almost like what you were saying, these paintings where the Renaissance and feel, they look like Ophelia in terms of the hair. So that it's beautiful and very disturbing, clearly at the same time. And then Mark, we sent him the photography, and then worked from there, and also sent close-ups for each of our we called them angels that we were working with, or the lost girls.
Oh,
And they we sort of worked piece by piece by piece, which was incredible.
I love that. I love that process. I'm sure that was like so amazing to kind of work through and put together. And I love that you know you kind of shot that first and you're like, we're gonna kind of work around this because this is so important. I love that.
Mark is such a talent. I knew from like the immediately that I we were just like, he's the artist we want to work with. And he also did all of the poster art, and so and he which has, for each character, including myself, one half is photography and the other half is painting. And then we did a version of my character where she's completely painting, like, you know, she sort of gets all absorbed by it. But it was really incredible because we worked, every single person actually has a full painting, but we haven't released those, but we worked that way. So we had a complete painting, and then stripped away from there.
I love that. It's kind of like these are all of our characters and everyone has been harmed by this monster. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I love that.
And the impact of it, for sure. The sort of, yeah.
I can imagine, yeah, because you know, and again, the visual of, you know, especially on the poster art itself of, you know, like just seeing kind of like if you could peel back the skin, kind of what might look like underneath it, and that's I love that it's beautiful. So, considering, and this is also just, you know, the majority of things that I have seen you in have been on at least on the verge of horror esque genre. Is horror a genre itself that's always interested you, or is that something that you've become a little bit more maybe interested in kind of going forward? As you know, especially with this film, obviously the subject matter you can't really. It's going to be horrifying no matter how you present it. But is that sort of something that you've always been interested in and that you might want to, you know, pursue more in the future or?
You know, I've been lucky in that I've actually been, gotten the chance to do all kinds of genres and all kinds of characters. And so, like this last season, I was on Amazon's show Bosch, recurring as a character named Rita Tedesco, who's a very interesting character. And then this season, I've been recurring on a show called Claws on TNT, very, very different character. I started out doing, and all through my career have done a tremendous amount of theater work as well. I, you know, worked with Tim Burton on Ed Wood, and worked with, you know, all different kinds of filmmakers. I just did actually a Western with Jake Busey, and I'm excited about it. It's the director is a guy named Thomas Nagovin, and it was produced by E. Elias Marriage, who directed Shadow of the Vampire with Willem Dafoe and John Malkovich, and he did Suspect Zero with Sir Ben Kingsley. And it's a very visual, interesting movie that we got to do in a very COVID safe way. I think for this particular film, we thought that it was a great way to tell this story, and genre is a wonderful way to not necessarily go head on at something, but speak to something. I mean, Buffy is a great example. The whole metaphor for Buffy is high school is a nightmare, and who can't really relate to that? And so it's a way for you to talk about things without preaching, with sort of getting to an emotional and visceral place, and bringing that terrifying and harrowing element that really suits this subject matter in particular, which I'm sure you could attest to growing up. You know, there's one of the things when you were talking about the camera choices. We based the movie largely on a book written by psychologist M. Scott Peck called People of the Lie. And the audio version is actually wonderful. He reads it, and it's a little bit it's abridged, so it doesn't have the religious based stuff. Which for me, I'm not religious, so that stuff didn't speak so strongly to me, which is in the hard copy book. But he talks about the fact that when you're in the orbit of a narcissist, a malignant narcissist, that you feel a combination of confusion and revulsion, and that you know the idea that you start to lose yourself bit by bit by bit. So we wanted that feeling in the movie, that the instability, the feeling like the character's losing herself bit by bit, and the every time she gets near the Darcel character, there's statics and blurs and things of that nature. So we really were playing with it again to evoke an emotional response, not a cerebral response. So horror is or genre is a really good way to to look at this particular issue.
For sure, yes, and as you said with the camera, with the static, and there would be certain scenes where you knew something very intense was about to happen, and this camera gets really shaky, and it's just very kind of dissociative and panicky, and it was amazing. I loved it. So, but yes, that makes so much sense. What is it like just for you to kind of be basically like a vampire kind, pop culture icon, to kind of be part of that legacy, with all of the people that were in the film with you that, are also part of that, sort of, I guess, family in pop culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It actually does make sense that we're family. I mean, in terms of an icon, I don't. It's funny for me. To think of myself one way or the other about that. I'm an actress who was really fortunate to play an incredible character, and people have responded so strongly to the character and the universe and the show, and it's grows. Uh, Continues to grow and grow and grow, and people are sharing it with the next generation, and it was trending during the pandemic. So it's really amazing to be a part of something that spoke to a lot of people. It's funny because we've done another project where all of the same talent has come back to work with us, plus Willem Dafoe and Tim Burton and many others, and we've shot most of it, and it's actually is a documentary series, and it is about it's called the Undead Series, and it really is about that family that you're talking about, in terms of that once you've played in that sandbox, there kind of is a connection between all of us, and just the stories that we share in terms of the vampire teeth and the everything that goes into it. It's pretty special.
I could imagine, and I'm familiar with the series. I couldn't find it, so yeah, I wasn't sure if it had premiered yet or if it was something that is in the
Not
process.
Not yet. We're in the it's funny. So A Place Among the Dead is crafted in an unusual way, as we've said, and it's entirely scripted.
Mhm.
So every
It doesn't
single
feel
part of it
scripted
is.
though, which is amazing. The actors do a fantastic job of being like, this isn't scripted.
I'm so glad, because
Yeah.
there's faux interviews in it, and every bit of it is scripted, and I'm so glad that it felt like that way, because we wanted it to feel completely spontaneous. Um, uh, we scripted it using this meld of fact, fiction, and the fantastical, and so many of the factual elements. People often have been coming back and seeing the movie again and again for a number of reasons, including picking out more and more of the Easter eggs of, oh, this is real, this is. And in the movie, we are making this vampire documentary, which is the Undead series, which really we have been making, and it is not out yet, but we have some really exciting news soon that we're going to be announcing about that and a couple other of our projects. So there's some really great stuff brewing with all kinds of things. I'm really
I
excited.
love that. I'm so excited about that. Now,
Yay!
when I watch it again, I'll be like, oh, okay, I see there's a thing being made within the thing. You've got a whole
Right,
Inception thing going on within this
right.
film.
You do.
I
But
love it.
it's interesting. One of the things that you had talked about in terms of when you responded so strongly right from the get-go with the voiceover. I had an experience last week with a journalist that I have known for years, from since before Buffy. Every single project, we always get together. She works for a major publication, and we were scheduled to do a 20-minute phoner about the movie, and we ended up being on the phone for over an hour and a half, and it was such an incredible, powerful conversation. She said, I'm so excited to talk to you about this movie. And she um, began to tell me that she felt like the way that it was constructed, that I was speaking directly to her and not even the rest of the audience, but just literally to her, and that it put her inside my character's experience and then made her reflect on her own life and turn the lens on herself. And so she started to share with me, and because I'm keeping her, as I have with everybody who shared stories with me, everything is I'm keeping anonymity. Um, but she shared with me that she was sexually molested from the time that she was 12 to 15, and we had the most incredible conversation about, well, okay, so how did you come through that trauma and craft this powerful, wonderful life for yourself, where you have this, incredible career, you have a loving relationship, and how did you become the warrior that you are, coming from this, and that's really what the essence of what we want to be talking about, and sharing with people, is that kind of thing.
I love that. Yeah, and I'm sure that just is so powerful for you as well. Like you really put your all of your heart and your effort into this, and it's just really been such a personal and special experience for so many people, and will continue to be the more people that get to see it and the bigger this conversation gets, which is fantastic.
It's so rewarding. We literally have had such an outpouring on social media and emails being sent to us, and people saying, uh, people people that hadn't necessarily even, all kinds of things. Like we had one gal who sent such a touching, sad email about, her fiance of 4.5 years had committed suicide, and his mother, he had suffered narcissistic abuse, and she said that the cycle of abuse was continuing after he had passed away. Um, but what she found so helpful in the movie is that she felt like, for the first time, she really understood him in the inside of kind of what the struggle that he had gone through, and it gave her a real sense of peace, which was just, really. And we've been corresponding since then. She's actually been reading People of the Lie and been finding that really helpful. We've had people say, I didn't realize I was with a particular person. I've broken up. It's 3 years, and I'm now only getting a sense of myself back, and feel like myself again. And the minute I saw your movie, it clicked for me. I didn't actually realize what that was. Um, or we've had people that, like one of our producers, is the comes from the most loving and stable background ever, and he's a wonderful, wonderful parent. But he said, I got inside psychological abuse in a way that I never had understood it before. I felt like I experienced it and could fathom what that really is. And he said it really started to make him think about, and he's wonderful already, but he was like, what are the agreements I'm making with my own children? What is it that I'm either tacitly or verbally, passing down? And maybe I can be mindful about how I could do that better,
Which is
so it's
amazing. I mean, that's incredible that someone watches it and is like, I'm not a bad person, but everybody is a constant work in progress, and that he's like, I want that's amazing. That makes that like makes me feel so happy to know that about him, and the other stories are so sad. But
well,
it's
they're
so
incredible too, because
incredible. Yeah.
we did one near the holidays, and we thought, let's see, this will be an interesting, because people are dealing with family and all that stuff, and
Oh
you
yes.
know and it was so interesting, because a lot of people said, my goodness, I ended up not, I saw your film and I decided not to engage with my family for the first time. Like it never occurred to me that that was an option. And it isn't the way for everybody, but personally for Dev and I, like our lives really bloomed once we distanced, which it sounds like yours did as well. Once you took your own path and distanced from really toxic people. Um, and just the fact that people were like, I didn't realize that that wasn't even an option. And I've always felt more alone when I was around my family than being alone. And this holiday being alone was like fantastic. I had the best holiday I've had of my life. That's pretty extraordinary.
Really special. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing all of those stories. It's just it's so incredible and powerful, and oh, I'm just taking it all in. Do you personally have a favorite moment in the film that just means a lot to you? You kind of look at it and maybe you see, maybe your own growth as an individual of like, wow, I've come so far, or just, this is just something I've always wanted to do for like a movie and I did it here. Is there something that's just really important to you personally in it?
I think my favorite part right now is actually with the movie being complete and sharing it in the world and getting to have these discussions. I mean, one of the things that's so interesting is even one of our actresses who has had come to the film and had so many like revelations in terms of, she said first she was really thinking in terms of her own, the voices in her mind and how those have been keeping her from being her best self possible. And then she was thinking about what she had passed down to her own child. And then she always thought like, well, I haven't really been touched by narcissism. And then she realized that one of her family members, that's exactly what that was. And it's been such a sort of process, I think, with it. And I think for me, when I was growing up, part of the reason I embarked on being an actress and then now an emerging filmmaker was, I really did want to look at the human condition, and stories made me feel less alone. I felt like, oh, I understand more about myself from seeing this particular person going through this. And oh, I'm not alone. I mean, that's the thing that's been happening on the discussions, is so many people say, in watching your movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. Oh my gosh, there's so and it's, I mean, the thing that's so crazy is just that we've had such an escalation recently of bad behavior, hateful actions, narcissism. And I think people have had enough really, and are wanting to look at it and say like, we don't really want this. We want a way for us all to sort of, for people to come together and care about one another and take care of one another. But as far as the movie, I think a favorite part, I think it's funny, while we were in pre-production, I loved working on that part and doing all of the sort of planning stuff. When we were shooting it, I loved being on set, and it was amazing to have had an ember of an idea and then be making it in action, coming to life. And I think we had we had definitely 110, over 100 people for working with us on our crew. Then post-production, I really loved working with our editor. He had cut the BAFTA nominated Tim's Vermeer, which is an incredible documentary, and I really loved working with Patrick. And then I adored working with our composer, Monica Richards. She's just so unbelievably talented, and it was such a collaborative, like-minded, simpatico process. And then the sort of the distribution phase, and finding Modern Films and seeing that they were a like-minded company, and that because we knew we really wanted to have conversations, they like to do these kinds of screening events, and we've extended the window because they are seeing the success and the demand for them. And so that's been incredible. And so it's funny, I think at each point I would probably like have said, oh, this is my favorite part. This is my favorite part. But right now, I think this literally, like having this discussion with you and hearing, when you said to me, like, there's no, the epitome of narcissism is you grew up in a cult, right? So how that, you can't that is like the definition, right, of the leader, I'm sure, and your parents that are
Everywhere,
everywhere.
everyone, even unintentionally, because there's nothing else. That's just what it is. Yeah, and it's horrifying. And but yes, I'm so happy that like, this film that is so powerful that you were just it was the entire process of making it was amazing. Because I know a lot of different people that work in entertainment, and they'll be like, "And I'm here and I'm passionate about it and I love it, but it's so stressful and it's so hard and I have to work with these people and that's hard, and then I have the distribution people and that's hard." And so I just hearing that it was a very fulfilling
It was. There
experience
was
was
there
amazing.
was one thing we did which I would never recommend to any other independent filmmaker to do, and we won't do again, which is that we raised 3/4 of the budget and thought, well, why don't we, rather than waiting to raise the rest of it, because Dev and I did that all through private investors. We thought, well, let's shoot 3/4 of the movie and then we'll raise the money. And we did that, which was amazing because we got, we boarded it. We worked with an incredible line producer. He was just so amazing, not only to the penny, but just a wonderful, wonderful man, and comes from this kind of background. It's so amazing how many people were like, oh my God, I so relate to this. Which we had no idea embarking on the beginning of the journey. Mark McKaylee, our artist, like so Monica, our composer. I mean, it's just how prevalent this situation is. But it was there was the moment where we basically said, okay, now we have to raise the rest of the money, and we've taken people's money, and we have 3/4 of a movie. And that was stressful because you just felt this burden. And of course, we did raise the rest of the money, and then we did schedule the rest of the shoot, and we're able to do it. But there was a moment where you felt like, oh my goodness, what if we don't, and we have taken people's money and nobody wants to invest in 3/4 of a movie? That's not good. So I would never recommend to do that, because there were some sleepless nights at that juncture where we were said, oh my goodness, why did we so gung-ho we were so gung-ho to start working, and we had also our we were working around our talent schedules. And so Gary Oldman saying he's available, you want to shoot when Gary Oldman is available. But that juncture, I would say we probably had it aged a bit during because we were so stressed.
I would say it was probably also another element was also like you're in this super creative moment and environment, and then suddenly it has to stop, and that's because of the money. And so I'm sure there was a
Yes.
lot of that was also like, I'm so ready to get back, starting it again. And
Yes.
is this, oh God, oh yes,
Yeah,
I
well, you're
I
a
can
creative.
imagine that was horrifying.
Yeah, and you're a creative person, so you know that thing too. Where and it's interesting. We've done a lot of the business end, but intrinsically, Dev and I are creative people, and that is where we live. It's where our souls are. And so, yeah, exactly. There is that thing where you're like, oh, I just want to get back to that bit. Like that's why we're doing this. Is really to get to that part.
For sure. So is there anything in particular that you have discovered along your own journey, especially, kind of recognizing what you grew up with, learning, to process that and heal from it? Is there any information you would like to, I guess, just share like from your heart to everyone listening, who might be going through something similar?
Yeah, I think it's sure that first of all, you're not alone. You're not crazy. Often people that not often people like this scapegoat, and they gaslight, and they suppress those around them, because it's not, people in terms of narcissism and understanding what that is. It isn't just about someone wanting to be successful and wanting to be on top. It's that they can't tolerate others having success. And so they are consistently stifling the people around them, and not necessarily in the beginning. I know in love relationships, often there's love bombing. There's that opening stuff which you feel like you're being swept off your feet, but it changes, and that's often a sign to run the other way. But I think I think one of the things that's been so incredible is we did some research just about our thoughts in general, and it turns out that even those that come from very stable, very supportive backgrounds, for everyone, it's about 80% of the thoughts in our minds are negative for every person. And we spend a lot of time being very derisive to ourselves, much crueler inside than we are to other people. Often, some people are cruel all the way around.
Yes,
But um,
fortunately.
yes, but what's interesting about that is to look at that and think, well, maybe if you could change that percentage even a little bit, like even to 50% negative as opposed to 80, how much more productive and proactive and loving, and what could we give to the world and to the people that we love, if we weren't spending so much time in that kind of monologue. But I think the thing to realize, we did one panel with this extraordinary group of women, and I think we called it the Power Women screening. And we had Ivy Kagan Bierman, who is our attorney, but she is, was listed as one of the 500 most successful women in entertainment altogether, not even law, just in entertainment. She's incredibly successful and powerful, and she comes from this kind of background. And we had Sylvia Lancaster, who started the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, who is one of the most inspiring women. She took the most horrendous thing, her daughter being murdered, and used it or took it to be a power of an instrument of change. And she has been reducing hate crime. She goes into prisons and into schools. She received an OBE by the Queen. She's just a phenomenal woman. And Sylvia was on the panel, and so many unbelievable people. And what was so interesting is every single one of them said, this morning I didn't feel worthy to be on this panel. I didn't feel like I belonged. It felt like sort of crossing this abyss to be. I mean, all these people that have done extraordinary things in their lives, and they are saying that too. And I think, when we initially made the movie, we thought, oh my God, are people going to think we're nuts sharing this sort of inner monologue? Are they going to be like, oh, well, that's, and the thing that's, surprised us is we knew it was going to resonate with some people. We didn't realize how, like, almost everybody, even the people that you think never, are so confident, other than the narcissist, it seems to really actually resonate with everybody. And so I think there's comfort. There's really comfort in that.
Yes, and I love that. Thank you for sharing. I will say I feel like if a narcissist saw this movie, they would probably be very angry.
They would hate it.
We might turn it off and not feel good and then just try to pretend it didn't happen, I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
So, but yes, and then I know you mentioned earlier you're in the middle of making the Undead series,
Mhm.
which I'm very excited about. I'll be keeping track of updates for that. Is there anything else that you're currently, because I know that you're producing the Undead series. Is there anything else you're currently involved in, for your future filmmaking career that you are able to talk about or would like to talk about, or?
Well, I'm definitely, and yes, and we're super excited about that. And I'm going to be hosting as well as directing, and so that's the Undead series. And then I can't say what, but soon we have just optioned an unbelievable thing too, that is going to be phenomenal and totally different in nature, in format, in the tone. And the Undead series is also each thing is unique. The Undead series is completely different than Place Among the Dead, where a Place Among the Dead is challenging and cutting edge and emotional, and all of the things that we've been talking about. I'd say the Undead series sort of speaks to the pulse of pop culture, and is really, really fun, and is, you know the thing that's really special about it is the interviews. You see people as you have never ever seen them before. I mean, I don't know why, but everybody is so relaxed, and almost every interviewer said, oh my God, I've never talked about that before. Oh my goodness. And we sort of use, the Undead as a springboard. So we get into their process, we get into their own stories, their fears, their loves, their everything. It's actually really. I'm so excited about that. And then the other thing that I can't yet talk about within the month, I think we're going to be doing an announcement on that as well. So it's pretty cool.
I'm so excited for both. I'm so excited. I cannot tell you. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna watch A Place Among the Dead and be like, oh, that was a lot. Okay, now I'm gonna watch an episode of the Undead series and
And
jump
just
onto that. I love that. Well, is there anything else you wanted to share about Place Among the Dead, or
is there anything that you wanted to, that in terms of your response when you were watching it, that you wanted to talk about further, or that you were thinking about, or in this conversation that's been provoked, and anywhere that you sort of haven't gone that you want to do?
yeah, not a lot I want to share, I guess, on recording, but
Okay.
there was one instance, because your character Jules is basically kind of on a detective mission in the film, and she sees these photographs of these crime scenes that Darcel has attacked, and there was one, and it was very, very brief, is the photographs just kind of flash across the screen that really just it like bit into my heart, where you see this dead baby laying on the ground, and
Oh
that
my
was
gosh,
just,
yeah.
it was that moment of kind of claimed from birth type thing, and it
Right.
was, oh, that was so powerful and incredible. And yeah, it's, oh, I got chills just talking about it again. That's
Yeah.
one thing that, yeah, because I wasn't able to cover everything I wanted to kind of tell you about in the Q&A, obviously, because there were 50 other people there, and I was like, I want to ask you this question and share this little thing, and thank you for making the film. So, but that was insanely powerful for me, and it's, oh,
Yeah.
there,
And
it's
how
there.
did you feel like, because obviously I know you said that, like, because you education was sort of your way of like that, and also gave you the glimmer of like, there's another way. I don't have to stay in this way. I mean, where do you think that you got the sort of power in yourself to go like, this isn't right. Like everybody around me is telling me this is right, but it isn't right.
I think it truly, truly, truly hit me when I realized that I did not think there was going to be a way for me to not be suicidal without leaving. And that was kind of my breaking point of, if this is what's right, if this is what is acceptable, if this is, and it was a cult, so very religious, if this is
Right.
what I have to do to get into heaven, I
Mhm.
don't want this. Like,
Right.
I will go to hell to not exist like this for the rest of my natural life on this earth. And, that was a terrifying decision for sure, because it was just, everything was against me, everything.
Well, and you'd been told like how treacherous and dangerous, unless you live that way, it
Of
would be, right?
course.
Like you would be condemned, right? I mean, like
Yes.
it would,
And,
yeah.
but it was just the feeling of, I feel like I'm already condemned in my own way. Like, if
Mhm.
this is what I'm supposed to be in order to be good, I can't be good anymore, because it's literally killing me.
Costing,
It's
yeah.
literally killing me. Yeah. So, it was that moment of, literally, I had this idea in my head of, because I was told, if I left, God would punish me to try to bring me back, and if I didn't come back, he would probably end up killing me. They
Mhm.
use examples in the Bible of like God striking people down because they didn't tithe enough, or things that, when you hear as an adult, might not resonate so strongly, but when that's all you've been told from
Yes,
the earliest time you can remember, they're very real to you.
of course.
So that was a big one of, I just had this idea of, well, I'm dead if I stay and I'm dead if I leave.
I
So I
go,
might as
so
well
might
leave
as well
and just
go.
try to be happy before I die. That was basically just kind of my process. And the first time I admitted that out loud, it was just really devastating to me, of being like, I literally felt like I'm dead if I do, dead if I don't. So I might
Yeah,
as well just do and just see
right.
what happens. And it worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
So
it did. It's almost like that thing when they talk about sort of hitting bottom, like you had nothing to lose. So you felt like I might as well get out of this, and if I'm gonna, either way, yeah,
yeah.
that's really powerful.
Yeah. But yes, and as I said, the movie, there are three movies in particular that have spoken, where I felt like they were kind of speaking to me about
Hmm.
different aspects of my life. And there's a movie called A Promising Young Woman that I feel like just perfectly represents my experience as a sexual abuse survivor. The Darren Aronofsky film Mother,
Yep.
it's a lot, but that ending just really speaks to me and my re-
Mm-hmm.
relationship with religion in general. And
Mm-hmm.
then this film is the perfect example of just kind of my relationship with everybody around me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of like that's like my little personal trilogy of like if you want to get to know the dark sides of all the stuff, these are the movies. But
Right.
that just speaks to how incredible A Place Among the Dead is, and
Thank you.
just how personal it is. And I love that you and Dev set out to make something that was personal for you, and in that process you were able to basically kind of tell the world like it's okay to feel like this and it's okay to acknowledge it, and it's okay to talk about it. That's the best part, because the talking is where healing starts. And
It
so
is where and it is that thing too of what you're talking about, because the character in the movie has like I are you going to continue in life to go toward the dark, or are you going to choose the light? And that there is a point, where once you're conscious, you can make those choices. Obviously, when we were younger, we couldn't make those choices. They were made for us, and then we were living by them. But and it also sounds like when with the uh, experience that you're uh, talking about and what you went through, that you were similar to me, like you had a lot of or similar to what Dev and I were sharing and exploring, is a sort of self-punishing, that you were very, like, in terms of your own, that you didn't take it out on anybody else, in terms of, it was a lot of like, because there's also that thing of where, when something isn't right, and that what it's being said, it's in the name of love, but it really isn't what love is, and that you aren't loved, but you can't actually look at that as a child because it's way too scary, that you get very busy with a lot of other things to really obfuscate that reality from yourself, because it's way too terrifying. And then there's a point where you were at, obviously, where you were able to leave, and where I was able to leave, where you say, okay, this is really painful to look at, but it's so much better to actually look at the truth than to keep all of that stuff, that's keeping me from seeing it.
absolutely, yeah. I remember when I first started trying to go to therapy, and something that I was told, was there's a difference between being comfortable and being happy. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were technically comfortable. You were not
Right.
by any means, it's not a comfort thing, but it's a comfort zone. And
Mm-hmm.
you could not be happy until you got out of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's such a messed up way to realize, existence happens for so many people. But thank you for making such a phenomenal film that, is already spoken to so many people. I can't wait, till it's available to wider audiences, and
Absolutely. It's going
other
to
people
go.
get to have this conversation, and it's going to be fantastic. So
Thank you. Yeah, we're continuing this window of distribution longer than we had initially planned, just because of the response that we've been having. So we're going to be doing screening events. And then we will be also opening worldwide, and then being on the streamers, and doing all the major streamers and all that stuff. So it's going to unfold, but we the power of these conversations has just been, has really been something.
I love it. And for anyone listening who hasn't seen it yet or would like to see it again, go follow Juliet on Twitter. She's always posting updates about when the next screeners are. You have a choice of tickets to just see the film, or to see the film and then be able to have a Q&A with her and a lot of the people involved in making the film afterward, which is how I got to see it. And it was just so rewarding. So definitely check that out. Thank you so, so, so much for being on my
Oh my
podcast
gosh,
today.
this
I
has
really
been
appreciate
amazing.
it.
The other way that they can do that too is, our distributor is Modern Films. So if they go to modernfilms.com/a place among the dead, it will have the screening events as they are coming up. And they're worldwide, so anybody can join in online, and we can all talk together. Chloe, how did you find out? Was it through Twitter?
It was through Twitter, yes. And it was, oddly enough, I was on YouTube. I was doing some research for my Scarlet Witch podcast, and I actually watched Buffy very late. A friend of mine showed it to me about 5 years ago, and he started with
Oh,
Spike's first episode because he was obsessed with Spike, and he's like, "I'm going to show you the show," and I had no idea what was going on. I knew none of the characters or anything, but I remember watching it, and I was like, "I like Drusilla," and he kept being like, "But what about Spike?" And I was like, "No, Spike's good, but I like Drusilla." And then he like got upset with me. He's like, "I showed it to you for Spike," and I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm just telling you what I liked about the episode." But I'd watched, just like some behind the scenes Buffy within the past year, and the YouTube thing just will pop up random things, and it had an interview with you and James Marsters, and I was also on Twitter on my phone, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder if Juliet's on Twitter." And I literally pulled up your name, and the first thing that popped up was the screening, and I was like, "She has a movie she directed," and I just bought the ticket on the spot. Like it was not like a planned out. It
that's
just
so cool.
happened. It just happened, and I was like, "I'm really excited." And I told my friend Joshua about it, and he's like, "I want to see this movie." And yeah, that's how it was, literally because YouTube algorithm randomly was
Suggested,
like,
yeah,
"Look at this interview."
that's awesome because it actually sounds really organic though too.
Yeah,
Like it sort of just
just
happened. Yeah.
literally happened.
And we were meant to do this, which is really, really cool too,
It's
you know.
incredible. Yes. But thank you so much. And yes, everybody go check out A Place Among the Dead as soon as possible. You will love it. I promise.